I've been living on the streets for 2 years, but this is the best I've ever lived in my entire life.
Wow. Hello and welcome to interview number 32 of Whatever. And today we have another special guest, Shawn McCrocklin. How are you, Shawn?
Doing great, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for being on. So, Shawn, where are you from?
I live in Terre Haute, Indiana. I grew up in this area and in a small town called Brazil. That if you've ever heard of it, you know from one thing: it was the birthplace of popcorn king Orville Redenbacher.
Oh,
And
awesome.
um,
And Shawn, what do you do?
I'm a Christian Science practitioner.
Great. That's, I'm sure, very rewarding work.
It is.
So did you grow up in a Christian Science Sunday school, or did you come to science later in life?
I actually came into it probably in my late 20s. I had bought a house and found out that two women had grown up in that house, and they were Christian Scientists. And so one day I wandered into our local reading room to ask about them, and I left with a copy of Science and Health, and it's been on that path ever since. So
Wow, what a great story. So, Shawn, how did you make Christian Science your own then?
um, well, let's see. How have I made it my own? When I went into the reading room that day, I was not a spiritual person. In fact, I was sort of on the border of being an atheist. I was a very
Wow.
angry atheist. I say I was a cussing, smoking, pot smoking mess at that time, but was is the operative word. But as I came to understand science and to understand the Bible and my relationship with God in a much clearer way, um, things started to happen. I had some healings immediately, and as my understanding grew, all of those things that I just labeled myself as started to fall away one by one. I had been raised in churches where God isn't so loving, and the way we find him in Christian Science. But with time and growth, like I said, the cussing, smoking, drinking all started to disappear, and so that's sort of how I've made it my own. Is I like to help people who feel that same way that I did that time when I walked into the reading room.
Awesome. So I guess we kind of get the answer to this next question, but why are you a Christian Scientist then, Shawn?
Well, I was telling you, I kind of, in Bible language, indulged in riotous living. And I think a lot of people identify with that parable of the prodigal son.
Sure.
And, the Gospel of Luke tells us that unto whomever so much is given, of him shall much be required.
Yes.
And I've definitely been given a lot, a whole new life. And when you've been given that much, you want to help and you want to share it with others,
right,
so that they can see God's love at work in their lives and the transformation that it brings.
Well, I guess we're talking about that. One of my favorite lines too is, "Who will love him most? He who he forgave most." Right?
Most. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we come to my favorite part of the interview. What is your whatever? What really turns you on and helps you grow as a scientist?
Sometimes I was talking to you earlier about these statewide meetings that we have, and I always precede that with, when I'm going on too much, give me the cut sign, tell me to cut it off, because I get so passionate about this, because my life has been so changed since finding Christian Science. But I like to reach out to people who feel like God doesn't love them, or maybe that God isn't there or doesn't care about them. people like me who were told that God hates them or they'll never be loved by God, because I've been there, and I get the chance to talk to someone who's struggling with drugs or alcohol, or doesn't have a place to sleep, or just
Wow.
overcome with everything that seems to be happening to them, and sharing with them how God really, really is there and does love them, and how our understanding our real identity can make those huge changes in our lives.
That's
And,
awesome. So why do you love doing outreach and sharing Christian Science?
you know, um, when I get to talk to those people that feel like God doesn't love them or doesn't exist or been treated badly or overlooked, I can say, I get that, but that isn't the end of the story. You don't have to hold on to those things. And there's a lot more to life. And there's real happiness that can be found, when you discover those things don't have any place in your reality, that God is the only reality. uh, Once we get through all the nonsense, life gets better, and that, we're able to forgive easier and find lasting healing. When people have hurt us, we can see that truth in Jesus' statement, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do, because we
Right,
see that
right,
our own faults and failures have just been mistakes. And because God isn't just the source of love, God is love itself.
right. That's awesome. So, Shawn, how have you grown spiritually yourself because of your outreach?
Uh, you know, Growing up, I always saw my grandmother doing three things: cooking, crocheting, and reading the Bible. And I didn't have the talent for crocheting, and I'm not a bad cook. But one thing I always wanted to do when I was a kid was to read the Bible, but I just couldn't do it. She was so dedicated to it. I knew that it had to be important, but I just couldn't get into it. It was dull and dry, and I just couldn't find a way. And but now, by being able to see the difference that it's made in my life, it's exciting now. You can find inspiration, and you can even find humor in the Bible. And
Sure.
it makes me want to talk about what I've found in there, and to share that with other people so that they get excited about it. And it's not just these ancient stories that have no bearing on our lives. And I think that makes me a better person, and it helps me to help others to find their way.
Awesome.
That
So,
the
do,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you have any healings associated with your outreach that you'd like to share with the subscribers?
Well, one I would like to share isn't directly my own healing, but I work in the reading room, and this has been a few years ago. We had a little cart that we put out front with sentinels and journals and some books on it, and occasionally a science and health and a Bible. And where our reading room was located at that time, there was a large unhoused population in that area, and they would go by. So we started to put out some hygiene supplies and just little things that they could carry with them and might be needed. And I noticed this one gentleman coming by almost every day and picking up a sentinel or a journal or a quarterly. And one day I just stuck my head out the door and said, "Hi, I'm Shawn. If you ever have any questions, feel free to come on in." A couple of days later, he was coming back by, and he came up to the door, and he opened it just wide enough to put his head and shoulders through. And he said, "I have a question for you." I said, "Sure." And he said, "God is love, and I'm God's image and likeness. So that means I'm the image of love, and God loves me." And I said, "You hit it on the head." He said, "That's okay. That's enough for now." And off he went. But he kept coming back. And then he would take a step inside the door. And then he would come in. And then he would come in and sit down. We would have the most wonderful conversations. And, eventually we ended up hiring him to do some work around the church and really got to know him. And one afternoon, he was sitting there talking to me, and he said, "I've been living on the streets for 2 years, but this is the best I've ever lived in my entire life."
Wow.
And to me, that just showed love at work. And
Yeah.
it really helped me in a sort of a change in attitude and in how I go about my day. that this had such an impact on him. And it just started with, picking up a Sentinel out front.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a home run, Shawn. You are amazing. You are definitely an expression of God in action. Very heartwarming for me to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our subscribers before I let you go?
Now, I wanted to ask you a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Did the name for your channel come from Science and Health?
Yes.
Oh, as I opened it and I was reading earlier, the first thing I came to was the passage on page 234. Whatever inspires with wisdom, truth, or love, be it song, sermon, or science, blesses the human family with crumbs of comfort from Christ's table, feeding the hungry and giving living waters to the thirsty. And I thought that whatever has to be Paul's channel.
That's
So
exactly the quote. Yep.
it's been a pleasure to be here with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shawn, and have a great day.
You too, Paul.